today's video is a large book video. This is going to be sort of a mashup of books that I bought on holiday, books that I read on holiday, and little bits of reviews here and there. So I thought I'd just accumulate this into one video because a lot of the books I bought on holiday I've already read. So there's a lot of books here, so we're just gonna get started straight away. I'll try and keep things as concise as I can. Hopefully this video won't be boringly long. But if you like book videos, grab a hot drink. If you want to look for some new recommendations, there's a little bit of everything and a lot of good books here, so let's get started. So the first book I read is one that I bought before we went away, and this is called Who Killed Ruby by Camilla Way. This is a thriller type novel. It's about a mother and daughter that live in London, and it sort of follows the mother and daughter, but also the main protagonist's mother as well. So you've got the three generations. So the main protagonist is called Vivian, and it follows her, and you learn pretty early on that she lost her sister at quite a young age. Both her sister and her sister's unborn baby were killed, and at the time Vivian was, you know, a young child, and she'd made a statement to the police, and that had always been the set, you know, story of what happened. She was convinced that's what she saw and what she heard. And as the book progresses, you start to think that maybe not all was it as it seems. Things aren't starting to add up, and she's trying to piece back what happened back when her sister was killed, and it takes on quite a dark turn. There was a lot of twists and turns in this, and lots of different dark sort of storylines. It comes about that her daughter gets kidnapped, and then she has to try and prove who really did kill her sister back in the day. So I found it really gripping. I did give it 5 out of 5 stars. I didn't see the plot twists coming, and that's always a good sign of a book for me. And this is the type of book where you had your suspicions straight off by some people, but like I said, it wasn't all what it seemed. So a very good thriller if you're looking for one. Next book I bought at the airport along with the book after this, and this was Adam Kay's 'Twas the Night Shift Before Christmas. I've read his first book, This Is Going to Hurt, and I did enjoy that one. It's about a now retired doctor who used to work in the NHS primarily. He worked, you know, with delivering babies and women's health, that side of things, and this has a Christmas element to it. I read this at the end of October, so probably a bit early to be Christmas, but I flew through this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's like it sounds, it's all set around the Christmas period, the days leading up, Christmas Day, and basically what it's like being in the NHS around Christmas. Like his last book, there was a lot of humour to it, but it was also underlined by the, you know, that dark side to it, and the reality of what goes on any time of the year in the NHS, really. If you did like his first book, you would like this one. It's definitely read his first one and then this one. This is sort of like a little add-on to it, really. But if you know someone who's liked his first book, this is a good one to get as a Christmas present, maybe. The next one I really liked, and I got this one at the airport as well. This is What Could Possibly Go Wrong by Dr. Tony Bleetman. This is he is a doctor, and he is also part of the air ambulance. And they set up a specific regiment. It's, you know, it's volunteers based, as is, I think, all of our NHS air ambulances are volunteered. I don't think they're actually paid by the NHS. Basically follows his time being a doctor, being enrolled into this air ambulance scheme, and all the things that he learns along the way, all the people he meets. It talks a little bit about how he got into it. He actually went in, was part of the Israeli Defence Force for a time, and I just found this book really interesting. I flew through it. There was a little bit of humour. If you like Adam Kay's books, you'll like this one. There was that little bit of humour, but also obviously it has this serious element to it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars because I just thought it was really well written, and I just could really not relate in the sense that obviously I don't fly an air ambulance, I'm not a doctor, but being as part of the NHS and working with people on a day-to-day basis, I could relate in that sense. He talked about some funny events, like when they had to fly into a prison and their pilot totally disregarded the prison officers and just landed right into the like wreck area. And there was another story where they had to try and fly by these allotments to save a gentleman, and all of a sudden these chickens just get swept up in the helicopter. And I mean, it's awful for the chickens, but at the same time, the way it was written was just hilarious. So yeah, I really like this book, can you tell? So that was that one. I read quite a lot of good books, I will say, so I pretty much liked most of these books. The next one was The Loneliest Girl in the Universe by Lauren James. Again, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. This is about a girl called Romy who is, she was born on this spaceship that is heading to Mars. Her parents were part of the initial scheme set up by NASA to send them to Mars to create a population there and start a new, hopefully habitable environment there. And what NASA doesn't predict is that they end up having a baby on board, and so she is the only child on the spaceship. Early on we learn she is the only person on this spaceship. Her parents died through some sort of accident, we don't know what. We know that she had a very good relationship with her dad, but there's something that went on between her and her mum, and she doesn't talk of her very positively, and she doesn't like to go anywhere near like the sick bay or anything like that. So it follows her at the start, you know, being on the ship on her own, maintaining it. She has connection back down with NASA. She speaks to someone who is part of the NASA team, and they help coach her. Obviously she's still a teenager on board and she's isolated from everyone else. And then one day she learns that NASA is sending up another spaceship. Obviously technology has come on a grand way, so it's able to get there quicker, and it's going to meet up with her and her spaceship, so her and this other guy that's on the spaceship can meet up, and then they can procreate Mars. And it all goes lovely and well. Obviously things don't always happen, and you know, there's things that we uncover obviously about her mother. They talk about the astronauts, who is a bit confusing at the start, because you're like, is this another term for something else? Like, is this a monster, like a weird thing that's going on, or is it actual astronauts? And we find out more about that, and also things happen on Earth that just leave Romy a bit, well, like the loneliest girl in the universe, really. I did really enjoyed it. I found that I loved anything set in space, really. I did feel, although it wrapped this book up quite nicely, I would like there to be a sequel to it. I couldn't quite figure out whether this is a standalone or if there will be a sequel, but I would like there to, because I feel that there's questions unanswered about, like if you've read the book about Molly and about NASA and the UPR, I feel like it wrapped it up and it didn't wrap it up in a sense. It's definitely left it open for another book. So yes, I like that one. If you like sort of YA, dystopian, sci-fi, this is a good one to read. The next one I read was Shark Beach by Chris Jameson. If you like Jaws, you're probably gonna like this book. This is set off the coast of Florida on this tiny little islandy area, and it's told from multiple different perspectives. So if that's not something that you like in a book, this is probably not one for you. I found it was quite easy to follow along with the different perspectives, because they were so different in ages and what they did and what parts they played in the book. So it starts off with this family, a set of 2 families that have gone on vacation to this Florida little destination island, and everything's, you know, going fine, and then they find out that a hurricane is going to be arriving, and they try and evacuate but they can't, and then they have to stay put where they are. That's not really a spoiler because it happens very early on. So you have the main families, you also have the group of like college kids who live next door, you have other different, like you get the perspective of like the policewoman. And the other sort of main aspect that makes this Shark Beach is there is a secret facility that houses all these sharks. I'm not sure if it's the government or it's some sort of big private company that are testing these sharks. They're manipulating these sharks to have different to like increase certain things in them, so like I don't know how to describe it, but to use them more for like military purposes and spying on different countries and things like that. So they've really manipulated their brains and really sort of walked them in a sense. And there is a prison guard who doesn't think that's good. He doesn't think it's morally correct, and one night when obviously the hurricane happens, he thinks this is my opportunity to do something about this. Obviously it goes terribly wrong and he ends up releasing all the sharks. I'll leave it there. But all the sharks get released, and then obviously there's sharks on the loose that like are craving people, because they've been test subjects and they have been manipulated to think the worst of things and be like hungry all the time. So as you can imagine, there is a lot of deaths. It is a little bit gruesome, but again, if you like shark stories, if you like Jaws, this is a cool one to read. So I did enjoy it, and really solidified my thought that I don't like going in the water anywhere, any open water. So next book I read was quite different, and Darren actually picked this one out for me in Books A Million. I was a little bit hesitant at first because I was like, that's a massive book, Darren, but I did read it fairly quickly. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and this is The Last Train to London by Meg Waite Clayton. And again, this is a multi-perspective book, and it's set in 1936, when the Nazis are starting to take power. You've got one lady who is helping to save all these children and transport them into different countries. You've got children who are finding out, hang on a minute, I'm Jewish, this is not the place to be right now. You've got people that are having to stand by and watch friends and family that are Jewish being taken away. You've got a woman who has to hand over everything to her non-Jewish husband in order to save what they have. And hope and promise that he will do what he says, and send her money and things like that. So it does tell all the sort of different perspectives you've got during the war of people from both sides of persecution. The only thing with this book is I would have liked it to have been more clear on dates, times and countries, because I found it a little bit confusing at times with the different perspectives in different countries. I would have just liked that little bit of clarification, like, yes, this is in Austria, this is in Germany, and so on. But I did like the book. I did read it fairly quickly, and I did enjoy the different perspectives, the different people, especially Sophie's mother, who was a journalist, and she wanted to do everything she could to, put the truth out there, because obviously people were too afraid to talk out, but she wanted to do whatever she could, even if it meant putting herself at danger. So yes, that was that book, and I did enjoy it, so I'm glad Darren picked that out for me. The next one I read was Mitch Albom's The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. I have had his second book for about a year now, and so I thought it was about time that I picked up his first book so I could then read the second book. This is a really interesting story. It's about a older guy who works at a fairground. He maintains these fairground rides that are on the pier, and one day he witnesses one of the pieces of machinery malfunction, breaks, and it looks like it's going to collapse on this child, and he runs to push this child out of the way, and in doing so ends up killing himself. And this book goes through him obviously being dead, but meeting these 5 different people who he would have either known or have briefly passed or crossed paths before in his lifetime, and they each sort of have like a story, a moral something that he can learn from it. I did enjoy this book. There is like a bit of controversy on this book on Goodreads, but I don't really see why. It reminded me a little bit of like The Christmas Carol and that sort of thing. So I'll be interested to see if the second book follows on from the same person, or if it is from different people that maybe have died. But I thought it was a nice, interesting, quick read, an interesting theory of maybe what happens with life after death. So yeah, that was that one. And then the next one I read actually took me a while to read, and I don't know why. I think it was just coming to the end of the holiday and there was so much that was going on. I was trying to fit in reading. But this is Murder, She Wrote, Murder in Red. I've read a couple of the Murder, She Wrote books now, and this one centred around one of Jessica Fletcher's friends who has just gone to this private clinic, and all of a sudden when they're at the after, like a wake of a person's funeral, at the reception, she ends up having a seizure and being taken to hospital, and later on dies in hospital. And you know, at first this just seems like some medical incident, she had a seizure, but things obviously aren't all what they seemed, and this private doctor that she was seeing comes into it, and all just is a bit sinister. And I did give it 4 out of 5 stars because I did enjoy it. I did think after the first half of the book, like the last third, it dragged on a little bit. I was just like wanting to know what happened, which is unusual because I'm not usually like that with these books, but I did enjoy it. I liked the hospital setting, and the twist at the end, again, I didn't see coming, so that's always good in a mystery for me. So that was that one. And the last book I read on holiday was Spirit Messages by Elizabeth Owens. If you've seen any of my Florida vlogs, one in particular, we went to Casadega, which is a spiritualist camp in Florida. I talked more about it in that video, so if it's up I'll link it down below. If not, just stay tuned for it. But I really became interested in like mediums and spiritualists, and you know, encountering with life after death and all that sort of thing. So I picked up this book, and this lady actually does live in Casadega, which is funny. I didn't know that when I picked it up, but I've like highlighted a few points, and it was a really interesting read. She goes on about talking about different things within mediums and how different people work, and just some of the fundamentals and basics on it, and just some inspirational stories that she's had and encounters she's had. So that was that book. So I'll just go on to the book I'm reading at the moment very briefly before I show you the other books that I got on holiday. Yes, there is more books. Pretty much all these books I've just shown you, except for the first one, are all ones I bought whilst away. But the one I'm reading at the moment is The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. This is about a woman who is agoraphobic, and she hasn't left her house in 10 months. And the only reason we know why that's happened is she had some sort of incident. Other than that, we know she's separated from her husband, so we think that has some sort of connection. And basically she just is in this lovely New York townhouse, and she watches out on her neighbours, and as the book starts to progress, she ends up befriending some of her neighbours. And yeah, I'm not quite sure where this book will go. I think it's probably gonna develop more into why she's agoraphobic. Maybe she will end up trying to leave the house more, but I think also it's got more stories involved with the neighbours, and there's like I think a domestic abuse storyline in it. But I've flown through this in the past couple of days, so that is what I'm reading at the moment. So I have 4 more books to show you. I'll briefly go through them. These are ones that I've not read yet, but I will get to. This book is Murder by the Book by Lauren Elliott. This is it looks like there's a series of these, and from what I can gather, it's about a murder that revolves around a bookshop. It says about an unsolved murder of her fiance and her father's fatal car accident. So it sounds like someone coming to terms with some deaths that have already happened, and then maybe another death. So I think this is one of those small town, small village, little murders, and I like things like that. So that's that one. The next one I got is a signed copy. This is Debbie Mackema's Alaskan Holiday. I want to read this fairly soon because it looks very Christmassy and wintry. I've read a couple of Debbie Mackema's books. The last book I read, which was Cottage by the Sea, I really enjoyed. There is her signature. So this, from what I gather, obviously is set in some cold Alaskan town, and the protagonist has just got their dream job as a sous chef, and different things happen. I'm not too sure, but no doubt I'll review it a bit more once I next read it. So that's that one. This one really stood out to me. This is Hope and Other Punchlines by Julie Buxbaugh. And this again is a signed copy. Let's show you that. So there is her signature. And from what I gather, this is about, I don't know if it's like, obviously the events it's talking about are real, but I don't know if this is a real story. So I'll have to find that out. But it's about a girl who, it says, Abby has lived almost her entire life in the shadow of September 11th. On that terrible day, she was captured in what became an iconic photograph. Abby, aka Baby Hope, wears a birthday crown and grasps a red balloon just behind her. The South Tower of the World Trade Center is collapsing. Now, 15 years later, Abby is desperate for anonymity and decides to spend the summer before her 17th birthday incognito as a counsellor at Knight's Day Camp 2 towns away. And then it sounds like she meets some boy at the camp. So I'm interested in reading things about 9/11. I've read one book I think before that surrounded it, but I thought this was quite an interesting one to read. So yeah, I picked that up, and I thought the cover was pretty as well. So that was that one. And then the last one I got, I love the cover as well. This is The Healer by Donna Freitas. I think I picked this up in the YA section. And it's about a girl who has an extraordinary gift. She has been given the power to heal, but her power comes at a price. She can't have friends or go to school. She can't date. She can't touch anyone. Basically, she feels trapped. And she just wants to be normal. So it's not the most original idea, but I thought it sounded pretty cool, so I thought I'd give it a try. So that was that one. The final book I want to show you is not a fiction book. This is something that me and Darren have had before. It has had a makeover and we needed a new one, so I thought might as well buy it whilst we're in America, get it sent to the villa because it's a lot cheaper. And that is The Marriage Journal. If you know, I've talked about it before. I will try if I can remember to link a video down below where I talk about it. It has recently had a makeover, which I love. They've taken a lot of things on board, like having a bookmark in it and things like that. But basically it's something you can do every week with your spouse to write down, you know, what you're doing in the week, and then you have 6 weekly questions that you ask each other. It's the same questions each week, and then once a month you have 2 monthly questions, and it's just a way of getting you and your spouse to connect and sit down and have that time together every week. So this is our new one for when we finish the one we're on at the moment. Whew. That is all that I've got to share with you today. How many books did I read? I read 9 books on holiday, and I bought more than that, and I managed to bring them all home, which is pretty good going. So if you've read any of these books, let me know what you think. If you're thinking of adding any of these onto your to be read list, then leave me a comment down below, and I shall see you in my next video. Bye guys!